Welcome. I am a lay Shin Buddhist who nevertheless maintains an interest in the broader realm of Pure Land and Mahayana Buddhist teachings. My YouTube channel is called Akala Akala, that is A-C-A-L-A, A-C-A-L-A. In these podcasts, I make a non-scholarly, humble, and sometimes bumbling attempt to explore a particular topic or question related to the wonderful Buddha Dharma. I hope you find them to be of interest. With that said, let us begin. So, back about 10 years ago, when I first started creating some videos for my Akala Akala YouTube channel, I made one called My Buddhist Faith. And I have to tell you, that was probably 4 or 5 generations ago in terms of audio quality. I think at the time I had a very basic camera and was probably using the microphone from the camera, not to mention the fact that in the middle of the thing, I think either my heat or air conditioning started up and created noise. So the audio quality is poor, I have to warn you. But in this video, which, I'm only obviously going to be uploading the audio portion of in this particular podcast, I say some things about my views on Pure Land Buddhism that kind of give a perspective on how I reconcile the belief in what seems to be a kind of deity with a basically scientific, rational kind of approach. And I think that reconciliation is quite feasible within the context of the system of Mahayana Buddhism, and so I thought it might be of some interest to some of you folks out there. Now, frankly, the first part of this podcast will be fairly straightforward Shin Buddhist doctrine, but again, it's toward the end that I sort of articulate how do I conceptualize, how do I view Amida Buddha and the Pure Land? Do I view the Pure Land as literally someplace out there in the universe? Do I view Amida as a godlike figure? Those are the questions that I address toward the end in a sort of spontaneous way that, as I listen to it now, still has meaning to me. So anyway, for what it's worth, here goes. There was once a time when I had a religious conversion experience. This was in 1979. It was outside the context of any particular religious belief system, but as I looked within and read and studied, it was Mahayana Buddhism that was the framework that made the most sense to me. And in particular, I greatly admired, as I still do, the notion of a being, of a bodhisattva, a Buddha to be, who forgoes or delays his or her attainment of perfect enlightenment so as to remain in this world to assist beings. I actually thought, hey, maybe I could use that as a role model and become a bodhisattva of sorts. I did various things to try to follow the bodhisattva path, and without getting into detail on exactly what those activities were, leave it to say that I failed miserably. I couldn't do it. And in spite of that failure, or maybe because of that failure, I discovered that there is a path within Buddhism that doesn't require me to attain that kind of perfect character. And as many of you will know, that, of course, is the Pure Land path, the Pure Land form of Buddhism, which was promulgated on the basis of the Sukhavati Sutras, or the Pure Land Sutras, of which there are 3. And it's within the larger sutra that a vow is made by a bodhisattva called Dharmakaya Bodhisattva, that in his particular case, he indicated he would forego the attainment of Buddhahood unless through his good works and the merit transference generated by those works that he could create a pure land of bliss in the western part of the universe where all anybody would have to do is think of him or say his name and they could be reborn in his Pure Land upon their death. This actually is the form of Buddhism that's been followed by more tens of millions of people in the course of history than any other form of Buddhism, but we don't hear about it that much in the West. In any case, this Pure Land form of Buddhism was refined to its ultimate degree by Shinran in Japan around the 13th century. And that form of Buddhism is now called Shin Buddhism or Jodo Shinshu, which means true Pure Land Buddhism. In any case, Dharmakara Bodhisattva, according to this scripture, this sutra, became the Buddha called Amida Buddha. So by simply saying the name of Amida Buddha in the form of what we call the Nembutsu means the name Namo Amida Butsu, which means I take refuge in Amida Buddha, by simply saying Namo Amida Butsu. In other words, by orienting ourselves in a way toward cosmic Buddhahood, in a way that recognizes our own inadequacy and our own faith that in spite of our inadequacy there is an other power in the universe, if you will, which is concerned with us and cares about us and wants us to be free of our suffering, to be liberated, that by simply orienting ourselves in that way, we can get assurance in this life that we will be reborn in a land that is free of the limitations that we have in this life that keep us from attaining Buddhahood, that keep us from being able to accomplish the Bodhisattva path. Limitations of this body, limitations of these circumstances. That by orienting ourselves in that way and having that faith, that we can have the assurance in this life that, we are accepted just as we are, and we will be reborn in Amida's pure land of bliss. And that is my conviction. That is my deep conviction and my deep source of comfort. Now, do I believe this in a concrete way in terms of the idea that, there in a specific place in the universe concretely is a godlike figure? No. But I believe that conceptual system, that way of thinking, most closely describes a dynamic or a process that is real. Keeping in mind that no conceptual system, no worldview, no way of thinking about reality is adequate to describe reality with a capital R. But given that we have to have some way of thinking, and given that we are suffering in this world and we are inadequate to become perfect, and we do reflect on and are concerned about what happens when we die, that I think it is true that there is a force in the universe that accepts me just as I am, and that there is a profound ideal that can be attained when I die, at which point I can come back and more freely and more capably help those in need in various ways that are inconceivable to me in this life. Namo Amida Butsu. With that, I will sign off by reciting the Nembutsu in gratitude for being embraced and accepted just as I am by Amida Buddha, never, never to be abandoned. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu.